Yo, 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 yo. What up, though? What up, though? Welcome
Hey,
back,
that was a
everybody.
little
What's up?
slower than normal. I was typing and I got distracted because I was trying to type the new text scroll. So as the countdown's going on, I'm typing and then it goes off and the background is on. No music is playing. I'm like, wait a second, something's supposed to be happening. So
Yeah, all
forgive
good,
me,
man. All
folks.
good. We got to get back to a little bit of upbeat music on that 30. Like, we had like that epic 30-second countdown music. But I get it, man. I know you
Yeah,
got a lot.
they changed that music. I didn't change that. They changed that music, so it still catches me off guard because, like you said, the original music was a lot more. It sounded a lot more epic, and important. And so this is kind of like cheery and jolly, and it throws me off. So
Right. It went from like the opening, gripping scene of a movie to like riding up an elevator at a Hilton hotel. You know,
right,
so we'll switch that vibe up. But everybody, welcome back. Oh, Pastor Green, you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah. Heard a little background noise, but just wanted to welcome everybody back to episode 44 of Uncomfy Truths. We've been doing this going on. It'll be 3 years this summer, actually. So we're coming up on 3-year anniversary. Glad to have everybody back with us. And once again, our motto here at Uncomfy Truths is because if somebody else doesn't say it, then we will. So it's good to have everybody back. Pastor Green, conspiracy brother, how you doing out there?
as good as you can, and with the craziness going on, it always seems to be a new level of crazy going on. So you know,
Yep. Just trying
I
to keep
goes
right here
concur.
there.
on the streets. What about you, Pastor Green?
I'm well, highly favored, and I'm just ready to get into these topics because it's a lot that we need to discuss.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna hop right into it. So once again, guys, I'm gonna share my screen real quick. As always, quick housekeeping. Make sure you guys give us a follow at Uncomfy Truths. As I throw up my screen right here, give us a follow on Rumble. We are also on YouTube as well as Odyssey. I got an older browser, so whenever I pull up the Odyssey page, the thumbnails are like missing for some reason, so it just looks kind of awkward. So I just like to show, the YouTube, Rumble. Feel free to give us a follow. And then obviously, if you look up here, you can see all the different guests, past and present, that we had on the show. Some more frequent than others. Once again, subscribe, follow us, and like I said, we're pretty consistent. We've been consistent for a while, streaming bi-weekly on weekends. All right, y'all. So first topic, let's go ahead and get into it. It's definitely been something that's been highly contested. A lot of people talking about it. This might be they call it new OJ Simpson, the new kind of racial war. They're kind of beefing it up, but we got to talk about the Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalfe case. I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm going to give a little brief synopsis for anybody who may have been under a rock. And I'd like to have you, Pastor Green, kick it off with your thoughts. I'll give a little bit, and then conspiracy brother. But yeah, so once again, this case is out of Texas, Frisco, Texas, where Karmelo Anthony, he was 17. Austin Metcalfe, the victim, was 17. And this all erupted at a high school track meet, I believe, between two schools. And basically, it was raining. And at one point, Karmelo went into the other school's team's tent. And apparently, he was sitting in somebody's seat, and they were all hovering under the tent with the rain. And some sort of altercation. I mean, the videos still haven't dropped. There's still a little bit of conflicting reports, some rumors that got kind of squashed, but apparently they were egging him or Austin Metcalfe and whoever his group was about, hey, you can't be under this tent. You can't be in our seat. You have to get out. And then Austin's kind of egging him on, whether it was a shove or a push or a poke. Where everybody's still kind of giving the still ambiguous, guesses because just based off of reporting because we don't have the videos. And then basically whenever Austin just kept bugging him, Carmelo had a knife that he brought to school. Obviously, schools are weapon-free zones, knife-free zones. He brought a knife in. Unfortunately, he stabbed Austin Metcalfe in the heart. and he just kept saying, "Hey, don't mess with me. See what happens." Austin died that night as I think EMS arrived. Karmelo got, basically he stayed at the scene, got arrested, and all that song and dance. So I'm sure everybody's is at least well versed enough on the story. If not, definitely do some more research. But this has been a case that's been almost kind of like October 7th, been kind of dividing a lot of people, especially on the right. Now, this is kind of definitely giving new waves, kind of like I feel like there's a psyop angle to this that I'm going to discuss. I'm going to cut a little deep, but I'm sure everybody has their own thoughts. So once again, Pastor Green, I'm going to kick it off to you first. Give us your thoughts on the latest with this Karmelo Anthony Austin Metcalfe tragic situation.
Well, unfortunately, what we have here is a clear-cut case of murder. An argument or a fight should not result in the loss of life. And when that does, charges are going to come, whether it be manslaughter or murder. But looking at the results of what transpired, it doesn't matter what initiated. The end result has no justifications. I mean, this kid stabbed another kid. Karmelo stabbed Metcalfe in the heart with a knife. That's murder. So no matter how anybody want to spend this, and the thing that really bothers me, because working law enforcement all my life in New York City, I've seen dozens of cases like this, and there was no discrepancy. The perpetrator who committed the murder was locked up and put on trial. But the thing that bothers me about this, we have the blackity blacks who want to make this a racial situation. They want to talk about, Karmelo Anthony was not a seat, and people are saying, we're not going for that Rosa Parks. We're not going for that Rosa Parks type thing again.
Mm.
Well, Rosa Parks didn't jump up and stab nobody.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, let's be for real. Yeah, her rights might have been violated, and maybe Karmelo Anthony's rights might have been violated, or maybe it could have been handled better. But the end results has no justification. A murder was committed. And the thing with black people today, we got to, black people have to stop making everything a racial issue. I don't believe race had anything to do with this. I could be wrong, but because I was not there. But even back in the day in the black community, a fist fight was a fist fight.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a gunfight.
Man to man.
It was man to man.
Meet the playground at 3:00.
Exactly.
Right.
But see, though that type of logic has gone away, gone the way of the dinosaur. It's become extinct. I mean, arguments and fistfights should not result in fatalities. Yeah, if two young people want to fight and get into a fight, okay, they could get involved in a fist fight, and that a fist fight could be broken up. But what's the end result of a murder? Lives are lost. And the last thing I want to say about this, it seemed like the father, Metcalfe's father,
Mm-hmm.
he really wants to make amends. He really wants to make peace. And when I saw him at the parents' press conference, and their representative told him he had no right to be there, and the way he was treated, I thought that was horrible.
Yeah, it was low. Yeah.
Because here's this man. He lost one of his twin sons, and yet he's showing forgiveness. He didn't come there with a weapon. He didn't come there arguing. He was just there to make amends somehow. And he was thrown out. And I think there's certain segments of the black community that have become so senseless and so heartless to, so many want to talk about white supremacy and the KKK, but we're acting the exact way that we were treated years ago, and that has to stop. I think really now we lost our moral ways, and there's no justification for how so many in the black community are acting. There's no justification for the hatred that they're showing, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
All right, Pastor Green. I got definitely a lot I want to just speak on. And Conspiracy Brother, I know you've been getting more well versed with the case. I just want to kind of at least lay down, maybe go a little cut deeper. Then I'd like to have you, Conspiracy Brother, kind of wrap it up with your thoughts. It's just a lot going on with as far as this case goes. As far as they had the parents' press conference. There was something a little off to me about really bringing up the mother, the mother, the Mrs. Anthony, and just the fact that she's given this whole sort of, oh my God, my family, we can't sleep at night, and my 13-year-old just is scared for her life, and it's kind of like a weird symbolism where they're putting the black woman up front, the father's in the back, Mr. Anthony's not saying anything, and it's just this weird level of no really remorse or like accountability as far as, hey, we have a lot to do. We got to talk to our kid, and we got to, obviously you can't say all that in the press conference. So that kind of threw me off. I think also with this case, unfortunately, a lot of people need to really ask themselves that are really defending one side or the other, if Austin Metcalfe was black and Karmelo Anthony was white, would you have the same strong feelings that you're taking on, that you're just taking on this side? Another thing we got to ask is, like, how come they're not dropping the video? If Karmelo Anthony, if he was unprovoked and Austin was just attacking him, why hasn't the family called for the video to be released to clear his name and show that, hey, this wasn't what it seemed? And the fact that once again the family, Dominique Alexander, who's propping his new Next Generation Action Network, how they're not calling for the release of all the video footage says a lot. All right. So once again, I think from Austin Metcalfe, just from what they've been saying, like, obviously nobody's perfect. And obviously I think he did have some egging on to do with this case, with like provoking Karmelo. But once again, this level of escalation, unfortunately, shouldn't have been something that should have been done to this level. I mean, once again, Texas actually has doesn't really have like a second-degree murder charge. It's really just like first-degree murder. So that's kind of why first I was looking at this, like, why are they charging this guy first-degree murder? I think it wasn't premeditated. I don't think he left home going to track meet saying he was going to kill Austin. But apparently, if you go look up in Texas, they only have like a first-degree, basically encompassing first-degree murder charge. I think another thing we have to think about, which is kind of very uncomfortable, I'm gonna go a little cut deeper, is the fact that what you talked about earlier, Pastor Green, is the lowering of morals, the dumbing down of the black community. And I would have to say, and I'm gonna be a little vulnerable here, but I was born in Detroit. I grew up in part of Detroit, but I also spent some time my later elementary, middle school years in the Detroit suburbs. And there's a weird dichotomy when it comes to obviously the gang culture, the prison culture, the hip hop culture that's been ingrained in our communities, that where it's kind of like that saying from Don't Be a Menace in South Central. You can take dashiki out the hood, but you can't take the hood out of dashiki. So I had a cousin who was murdered in his late 20s. And it was one of those things where they moved out to the suburbs around the same time I did. Yet when you're ingrained in certain circles, you have certain crowds that you roll with, whether you meet them in elementary or middle school, it's a ingrained gangster hip hop culture where that that person, that crowd is gonna want to prove how black they are, how street they are, because hey, I'm from 7 Mile, I'm from over here on Mack Avenue, and there's a magnification of that when people like Carmelo Anthony's parents, who are well intentioned, he came from a good home. They were moving him out to Fresco, which is like a very affluent suburb. And basically, from what I've seen, like they did everything they could to put really Carmelo Anthony in the best position, because it was a good school, a fluent suburb, and once again, the Anthonys were well to do. I will give them that. But if you go through their IG, because Carmelo Anthony's social media, which they've scrubbed, but a lot of people went in there and took screenshots. A lot of his social media had a lot of hip hop, gang culture, just trying to be of the streets. And when black kids are either bust through forced integration, or even if they're just moving to the suburbs, especially I saw this in the 90s and 2000s, they have more to prove. They go out of their way to say, hey, I'm black, I'm from this side of the street. And with me kind of being in the suburbs a little longer, I was slim, I was fresh pickings to get bullied as far as like, oh, you're not as black as we are, and blah, blah. So I saw my cousin get wrapped up in that, where even 10, 15 years out of moving out the hood, he barely graduated high school, didn't go to college, ran with the wrong people. He ended up messing with the wrong girl and then the ex of his girlfriend came and felt he got disrespected by my cousin. Next thing you know, he got jumped by two of his boys, and he got shot, killed in the alley. And once again, my cousin just kind of fell for, I still want to run in these streets, even though I've been in the suburbs for 10, 15 years. And whoever that guy was, just once again, it was just all about positioning, all about this is who I am and how dare you disrespect me. So my cousin felt from that. I've been in schools where I've met Carmelo and seen Carmelo Anthony's over and over again, where their parents do everything they can, move them to the suburbs, do the right thing, get them around the right schools, to try and get them to the right people, but they fall for that culture. And I think that's what did Carmelo Anthony in, to where the parents did a lot of what they could, but it just wasn't enough. I've seen it happen with my cousin. I came across these Carmelo Anthonys in school trying to prove how black and how hood they are, even though they're in the suburbs. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that layer, because I don't think that's being talked about. That's, I think, the uncomfy truth that we haven't been mentioning on just like the hip hop, the brainwashing, and a lot of people that, once again, the not like us Kendrick Lamar culture, where instead of just enjoying the music, our people, we're trying to live that gangster diss culture. And this is kind of, unfortunately, I think a result of that, with Carmelo Anthony deciding to escalate the situation. How dare you disrespect me, or telling me to move, or tell me to get out of the tent, when there was really no need for that. So I wanted to just provide that additional context. And I think that played a factor. Okay, that played a big factor in this. I think a lot of people aren't talking about. But Conspiracy Brother, I know I went a little long-winded. You go right ahead. Give us your take so far.
Yeah, that's fine, because I always have a tendency to do that myself.
Yeah.
The story for me still is one that I haven't followed, and a lot of the reasons I haven't followed it is a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. What tends to happen, and you saw this during the Trayvon Martin situation with Michael Brown and Freddie Gray and Elton Sterling, and all the names of people who were involved in either shootings by police or by members of the community, that either the details were foggy, or they left a large segment of society upset with the verdict and outcome of the legal hearing or the legal process. And so what I kind of really realized about it all is that the Democratic Party and you want to call them the progressives or whatever, the so-called left, whatever you want to call it, their objective is, and I was very suspicious of these organizations even in the beginning. Like, I never was a vocal supporter of Black Lives Matter, never donated money, never posted any of their information, or never supported them in any way. But I was always skeptical of them, like D. Ray McKesson, who always wore that blue Patagonia puffy vest, or the three ladies who were in charge of BLM and people like that, because it was obvious to me, as I'm sure Pastor Green can recognize, and you too, conservative brother, that they had a certain aura or energy, however you want to look at it. They gave off a certain something that made you question their motives. And it's a feeling similar to a feeling that I've felt, or that I felt. I was watching a clip of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and one of he was a writer for Axios, and he got up and he talked about how the mainstream media lost credibility by not speaking on the decline of Joe Biden, the mental decline of Joe Biden, right? And he says, we lost credibility. We need to do better. It's our job to do X, Y, Z. And when I realized, when I was listening to him talk, and his tone, and where he was saying this, and how he was saying it, and who he was saying it to, and the reaction from the crowd, was not that he was saying this to really affect a change in his colleagues or his community, because a lot of these people on the so-called left, or these establishment left individuals, like to use this term community for everybody: the Black community, the LGBT community, right? Everybody's a community, whether they have any ideological similarities or any real communal similarities or not. We're all a community to them. And so, but the reason he said this was for himself. And it was so that he could give cover to all of the people in that room who clapped and nodded and patted themselves on the back, so they could feel better about who they are and what they're doing, and so that they could have an easier time going to sleep at night or participating in the festivities of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's why he said that, right? It may have been true, what he said, but he did not say it because it was true, because if he had, he would have said it in 2021 or 2019 or 2018. All those times when we know Joe Biden's mental capacity was at best diminished, right? And so in that same way, you look at these activists, right? And you would, Twitter was at its height at this moment. And you look at what they would put on their Twitter bios, who they were. They were, graduates of XYZ or students at XYZ, and they were activists. And something I wrestled with, somebody who follows, Malcolm X, I follow Martin Luther King. When I say I follow them, I mean I read about them, I study them, I look at their lives and try to understand what motivated them to make the decisions and sacrifices they made, and to try to put that into a perspective that I can use for my own life. Not to try to make a one-to-one, but just to try to understand them better, right? How can I be a better person? And so I wonder, and I think, did Dr. King ever consider himself an activist? Did Malcolm X consider himself an activist? Would that be a term they would use to describe themselves? Would they have considered themselves civil rights leaders? And so the more I thought about it, and the more I think about it even today, I find myself saying that, I think not. And so those are signs that your objective is not to really affect change, whether I agree with what you're doing or your outcome or anything. Your objective is to find some way to make money and things for yourself.
Mhm.
So I'm in this long kind of roundabout way. I've stayed away from this because what I've come to realize from all of this amplification of these stories is that their intention is to try to make me or my, my neighbors, the people who do live in my community, right? The people who actually live in my neighborhood, or people in my family feel or the community that is America, right? The American people feel a higher sense of anxiety, a greater sense of social tension. And so I have to believe and hope that the legal process will play itself out. If this is justified, he'll be free and the facts will come out and we'll see. And if this was unjustified, he will go to prison and the facts will come out and we will see. And I cannot allow the media to manipulate the information in such a way that it causes me or it causes my mood to be affected, And so this is kind of what I had to do. This is one of the reasons I got off of Facebook in about 2013 when the whole Trayvon Martin situation happened. I looked at the way social interactions were happening between people that I knew, people I went to school with, people I'd known for a long time. And I realized that, it was more of a burden for me to engage in these interactions than it was a benefit. And that was even one thing what I noticed with Twitter. It became more of a anxiety for me to get a Twitter notification than it was a benefit, right? I wasn't happy to interact with somebody new. I was anxious about it. And so I had to, accept that this wasn't for me. It wasn't in my best interest. And so I just had to kind of get off and I think the commenter brought up a good point. And I think when we look at the history of this country, what always happens, and again, me bringing up all the long things that I've talked about, is people have a tendency, even like Conservative Brother, when you talked about hip hop music and stuff, I'm a firm believer, and we talked about it a bit on this show and at different points, but I'm a firm believer in the CIA and government intervention, the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, using hip hop as a method to destroy the Black community.
That part.
And Whitney Webb actually has a story that's a multi-part story that she's writing, detailing how P. Diddy and when he was with Uptown Records and their connection even to Jeffrey Epstein and going back, to what is it, MCA,
Jimmy Iovine.
Yeah, him and Clive Davis, I believe. And I mean, going back to the 40s, because I think, what is it? MCA is what? Music Corporation of America, right? So we understand that a lot of and there are firsthand accounts. Obviously, you have to take unnamed sources with speculation, but there are firsthand accounts of individuals at meetings discussing how they have to, these record companies are getting into contracts or investing in private prisons. And so they've got to do things to induce the community to fill up these private prisons. You know what I'm saying? And so you promote a certain type of music and you give it more airplay, because there are a lot of rappers who make music that is conscious and uplifting and is socially conscious. And I mean, I was actually even thinking about like the term woke, right? When you think about the term woke, and where it comes from, and just as a black slang word, all woke means, and all it meant historically, is that you weren't asleep, right? That was what woke meant. I'm woke. What does that mean? You're not asleep. And what does sleep mean? I'm aware. When you're asleep, you're not aware of what's going on around you. You don't understand the government's role or any external forces' role in your life. So I'm woke. Now, liberals and progressives have taken that term and they've morphed it into something different. And even you see conservatives have taken it and changed it into something different in a lot of ways.
They hijacked
and so,
yeah.
yeah, so it's become something different. But all woke meant was I'm woke. I'm woke. I'm not asleep. That's all that meant. It wasn't we want to LGBT anything. It did not mean DEI anything. It did not mean trans anything. It did not mean anything other than I'm not asleep. And so this it's a social process that is used to divide the people in a way that will further us from being able to overthrow whatever nefarious forces are trying to undermine us every single day. And, for the most part, it is working, and it worked. It continues to work, so I'll stop there because, but that's where I am on this. I've really, not to sound like whatever is the common cliche, but in the sake of my own mental health, I have just, stepped back from it all. But
all right, yeah, well put, conspiracy brother. I got a couple things I want to add, but Pastor Green, any else? Did you have any additional commentary for this while we're still waxing deep on this one?
This needs to wake up the black community as to accountability. I mean, it seems that no matter what we do as black people, there's no accountability for it. It's everyone else's fault. And that has to stop.
Yeah, and I will say this once again. I think while obviously things don't look good as far as Karmelo, Anthony is pretty cut and dry. While at the same time, I reject both the right and the left. How they're like, oh my God, Karmelo, like the right's like, oh, Karmelo Anthony, he's just guilty, throw him in the jail no matter what. And then of course you got the left, the left woke, like, oh no, Karmelo Anthony's innocent, he's the victim, making him into the victim. My attitude is we gotta quit with this rate, like you said, Pastor Green, falling for the racial idolatry, mainly on the left, but it also fall on both sides. I feel like take black and white out of it and go, okay, these two people, what did he do? What was his moral stance in this? And then kind of work your way backwards from there. And even Dave Chappelle even said it. Even Dave Chappelle said, hey, have sympathy, whether someone's in the Palisades or the Palisades of Palestine. We need a life is precious. A baby in Iraq and Palestine, or a baby killed in Iraq is just as precious as a white boy in the Appalachian Mountains or a black kid on the south side of Chicago. It starts with the life first, not the race of that person. But a lot of people, when it comes to the media and they pick their sides, they go from, oh, who's the race of this person? And then that determines who's the victim and who's the perpetrator. And what also sickens me is the fact that we all can agree there has been this sort of, and once again, the CIA, like you mentioned, conspiracy brother, like CIA definitely had his hand on hip hop and how it destroyed black communities. But we're seeing this reverse where it psyops so many black people into becoming like anti-white, where it's like at a point where there's like this sentiment of I'm going to defend this black person no matter what, even if he doesn't have the same values as me, if he holds a gun to a woman's stomach, or whether he pushes somebody into the subway or attacks what they're black first, so whatever they're doing, we just got to defend it no matter what. So there's that whole psyop. And then you got people on the right. I think Jason Whitlock had a guy, a J6 prisoner recently released from jail, and basically he ended up holding like protect the white, unite the white rally in Fresco, for Austin Metcalfe. And what I'm showing is that once again we're in a spiritual war where people are so caught up and going back on both sides, where it's the white people are doing this to us, the black people are doing this to us. And we got to realize, once again, I'm not trying to push anybody in a certain direction, but this is a spiritual war. This is between good and evil, and Jesus Christ is my personal savior personally. And I feel like if people don't come back to some sort of moral compass, they will have all types of idols. They'll have an idol for the earth and worship the earth and Mother Nature and pagan culture. Their idol will be in the form of their skin color, and they'll defend anybody that's black with a pulse, regardless of whether they murdered, raped, or whatever it is somebody. And even on the right, they'll defend somebody white no matter what. So I think we gotta get back to what is right or wrong. Where your morals stand. What do you believe spiritually? Or is your idol just your skin color, or just your climate change activism, or is it just even Trump being an idol, people putting up Trump as an idol versus, okay, I can criticize the guy, being him a baby, vote for him as well. So that's kind of where I'm at with this, where once again, I want to see the video come out. Once again, as far as Karmelo Anthony goes, this is once again really we got to continue to see facts and video come out. But I think we have to once again start it from a foundation of what did the person do, the actions and the facts, and not look at black or white, because that's what that's what the elites, so to speak, that benefit from both sides going at it want to keep us. They want to keep us at our throats. They want to turn this into a racial war. Versus, hey, if Austin did this, if White Austin did the same thing to Black Karmelo, White Austin killed Karmelo, we need to throw the book at Austin in that case. So that's kind of my thoughts, is that we got to, like you said, conspiracy brother, we have to look at the facts and not let it get to us, even though, we kind of know where this is going. But anyway, anybody else got any other thoughts? I kind of went in a ramble in circles. I think you guys get the point. Anything else before we move on from this case?
No, I'm good. I'm good to this point.
All right, y'all, moving on. Once again, guys, let's jump into the next topic. This will be a brief one. Our guy, he ain't really my guy, so to speak, but Shannon Sharpe. Shannon Sharpe, unfortunately, has been the latest Me Too victim. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but Shannon Sharpe, best known as an NFL Hall of Famer. I believe he played most of it. He played a little bit for the Baltimore Ravens too. But anybody remember what team he played for? Like most of his career?
Denver Broncos.
Denver Broncos. That's right, Denver Broncos. So Shannon Sharpe, we ain't gonna spend too much time on this, but he's been the latest Me Too victim. Apparently, a young woman of a certain persuasion, 19 years old, claiming that kind of a rape allegation, that he choked me, and there's audio that came out. And I think we kind of see where this has gone. I wanted to kind of give a little commentary, I think, on the kind of the more underlying tones of the story, and just seeing like, is this all they're trying to take another black man down, or has this been kind of like of his undoing? Anybody just kind of has their thoughts on the case. Once again, the latest Me Too'd person, Mr. Shannon Sharpe at ESPN.
Really what's going on here is just, this shouldn't even be in the news, period. Because first of all, this is a whole story of kinky sex. All right. Because you listen to the recording that happened 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no validity in my mind to any of this that's newsworthy, because there was no crime committed here. And when you listen to that audio, and he said he's going to choke her, then she's saying, well, I don't feel like being choked. That's a whole bunch of sexual innuendo, all right? And anybody can see with a rational mind, this is a shakedown. Now, whether, he don't want to be bothered with this woman no more, and he met her when she was 19, but I believe she's 21, 22 right now.
Right.
And it's a whole shakedown.
Yeah.
Okay, it's extortion. I mean, they have a consensual relationship, and they're into kinky sexual activity, and that's all it is. And they're trying to play it where she's saying, oh, she's talking about being choked, but that's part of their routine. And she's just trying to edit the phone call to make it look like it's a threat to her life, because you can just listen to it. Where her response was, "Oh, I don't feel like being choked today." I mean,
Right.
This whole thing just needs to just be just totally ignored. And you're telling me that there's a reason that he's being sued for $50 million? Are you serious?
He was gonna settle for 10 million. And
I want 10 cents.
yeah.
Because one thing I believe, people's private matters should be private. But that never was her intention. I mean, she's recording every conversation. But this should be a lesson to Shannon Sharpe that after he get out of this, he needs to find him a good woman and get married. And lead these video vixens, or what is she? She's an OnlyFans, I believe.
I mean, I guess he met her in LA. I don't know the whole backstory, but I think they met in the gym in LA or wherever it was, and
But this whole thing, this shouldn't even be news.
Yeah.
This shouldn't even be news. And I'm really tired of hearing about, because it's just nonsense to me.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think once again, like unfortunately, if it is news, it's something, at least a lesson we could take from this. And once again, I'm not here to shame or wag the finger at my man 54-year-old Shannon Sharpe. But at the same time, like he's a legal free man. He could be in a relationship, whatever who he wants. I just think unfortunately, we just became a culture of where this is kind of egged on. And once again, you got these OnlyFans, you got these Me Too women out here that they literally have lawyers with them, like, hey, let's go after this person. Like, the lawyer's a new pimp. It's not like my man Superfly on a 70, in the 70s on the street corner with a mink coat. You got these corporate lawyers who are like pimping these women to go out and target these men. So I think once again, there's just been a lot of things from Shannon working at CBS News to Fox Sports and now at ESPN, where I mean, you can keep gambling, like this, but eventually you will get caught up. You will find one of these OnlyFans Me Too girls coming after you. So it's just the way of the industry, unfortunately. And this really shouldn't be news, but if anything, we could learn, like, okay, y'all athletes that are trying to be Shannon Sharpe in the next 20, 30 years, learn what not to do, because you're going to end up in this foolishness. So, Conspiracy Brother, anything you got on this? Another Me Too hits the dust?
Yeah. So, I've only kind of followed this again, kind of tempted, kind of like, what is it? Superficially?
Yeah.
Right. But apparently they released some text messages showing that this is kind of how they talk to each other. She talked about being choked with like a dog collar or something. So kind of like what Pastor Green was saying, it's very unlikely that he was going to choke her in any way that was actually dangerous or unsafe, I guess, in a malicious way. But The interesting thing that I find is the same lawyer who is representing her is the lawyer who represented the ladies who accused Deshaun Watson and accused Jay-Z. And I was told today,
Tony Bugby, I think.
Right. And I don't even know if this is true or not, but I heard that now after he did what he did with Jay-Z pushed back and, countersued and stuff. He can't even practice law in New York anymore. So he was a lawyer in the Diddy stuff, and now he's got to send another lawyer to New York now because he's not legally allowed to practice law in New York anymore. So the interesting thing too is one of the text messages she was saying she wanted to have a baby with Shannon Sharpe. And so I think this is probably, what this all boils down to. If she could have gotten pregnant and then gotten, 18 years of child support, she would have been fine. She would have been happy. She would have been perfectly content. But maybe he turned her down. Maybe he has taken the precautions that he can't impregnate anybody anymore at his age. Who knows? But at one point, he offered her $10 million. And I guess he just signed a $100 million contract. And so now she wants 50 or something, which, whatever. But ultimately, yes, I thought about it myself. He's a 3-time Super Bowl winner, Hall of Famer. And, he's been in the public eye. If he's 54, to some degree, I'd say probably since he was at least, on the conservative side, let's say 16, since he was 16, 17, right? Because you got to go to college. Now, he only went to a smaller school, but even in a small school and in a small town, if you're the best athlete at that school in that town, you're going to get attention. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if you're the best where you are, you're the best no matter what. And so let's just say 16, 17, he's gotten attention from anybody. That's almost 40 years. And so, he just may not have been able to adapt quickly enough to the changing dynamic of these types of interactions nowadays. This is even, I'm very careful and cautious when I interact with women anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any money to give or anything, but I don't want anything I'm doing to be misconstrued. So at work, especially, I keep it very cordial and plain and very, hey, we're just co-workers because you just can't risk things like this. And so I think he's ultimately being railroaded. I don't think it's racially motivated necessarily. I think it's just financial. I mean, I think that one baseball player, I think Trevor Bauer, a white girl set him up. He's white. Yeah. So I think a lot of these women now, they wanted freedom and feminism and the opportunity to go out and work and have their own lives. And they realized it sucks, and that the majority of men in the world are working because we have to. And if we could find a way to get rich somehow and sit around all day, that's what we would do. And so they were scammed and tricked, which, we know feminism was also a CIA plan. But yeah, so I don't think it's racial. I think, unfortunately, a lot of Black women are cheering this on, or at least they have the word Schadenfreude about it because, they say, oh, he shouldn't have been messing with a white. Well, I think she's like Hispanic, actually. Anyway,
Umar Johnson, Umar loving this, calling him.
But if you look, right, you look at Anthony Edwards, and I'm not defending him at all, but he's 23, has a baby with a 38-year-old, and she's Black. and she's only had this baby to make money off of having a baby with a basketball player.
I think he agreed to pay her out a lump sum, like a
he
whole
did,
lump
but
sum.
I don't think they're going to allow it to happen. But it's possible. But even that, you're still being preyed upon because you are a millionaire, and these men need to take better precaution for themselves. But ultimately, what happens? The laws are skewed in such a way that for women, you can make claims, and the tide is turning thanks to, in large part, to Johnny Depp and how he handled the Amber Heard case and how he really fought to clear his name. But in large part, the laws are slower moving for people, and the lawyers and these type of individuals are hoping that the threat of public exposure, even if it's just because you have some uncommon sexual proclivities, getting exposed will coerce you into paying up. So,
well put. All right, so this Shannon Sharpe Me Too'd situation, definitely, annoying but unfortunate. All right, we'll just see what else is coming to that, and hopefully, people are going to continue to gold diggers can continue to do what they do. So we just got to keep it moving and then know what to stay away from. Once again, guys, you guys are watching Uncomfy Truths. Make sure to give us a follow. We are currently live streaming on Rumble. Give us a follow. We are also on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe. And then we are also on Odyssey as well. Next topic we got guys. We got the Trump administration versus Harvard University. Trump administration versus Harvard University. I believe this is going to the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken. The latest on this is the Trump administration is cracking down on what they call fighting anti-Semitism on their campus. And there's recently a list of demands that the Trump administration presented to Harvard. Now, I am no fan of Harvard, and a lot of their kind of overly, I hate to overuse the term woke, but yeah, they're progressive. They're long-time progressive, stances, and just how there's just indoctrination machines, and a lot of stuff on the left is just frankly annoying. And how they protest on campus and how they'll occupy buildings or they'll push people around. If a MAGA person came on campus with a MAGA hat or a pro-life person, they want to be protecting their free speech. They'd be in a back of a cop car as soon as you know it. So I've been no fan of Harvard, especially kind of, a lot of how the colleges are with BLM. Once again, the pro-Palestine protests, which I don't have a problem with them protesting their thoughts. It's just when it went to the point of pushing people physically around or occupying buildings or not letting people move through having their right of way. Because once again, they want to let the right get away with that on their campuses. But I think the Trump administration is overstepping when it comes to this changing definition of anti-Semitism and how when you teach certain things in their classes and the curriculum, the Trump administration is now saying that I think I could kind of pull up the list of demands, but a lot of it does have to do with, there is a difference between clearly anti-Semitism, inciting a violence or calling for the death of Jews versus I should be allowed to criticize Israel, so that's kind of where I have a bone to pick with the Trump administration. Even though Trump's my guy, I voted for him, but I think they're overstepping here. And once again, it doesn't please me to say this, but I think once again the administration here is in the wrong. Just how with COVID during the Biden administration, we've seen the changing of the definition of a vaccine. How vaccine all of a sudden can be this mRNA, all this other crap, and not what it was intended to do, to be a weakened part of a virus injected in you. So we've seen the changing of the vaccine. We've seen the changing of the definition of a recession. where I think it's like 2 to 3 consecutive dips in the GDP or the economic, y'all know what I'm talking about. But the Biden administration changed that. So all of a sudden there's a changing of the definition of a vaccine, there's a changing of the definition of recession. And here we are now, we have the Trump administration talking about the ever-changing definition of anti-Semitism. And I stand by, if you're not calling for direct violence, if you're not physically assaulting someone or blocking their right of way to get in there, if Jewish students just feel uncomfortable with your speech, I don't have any sympathy for that. But I feel like this latest Trump fight is a sore overreach, and I think it's gonna blow up in the administration's face. So once again, Pastor Green, you can go first if you got some context. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that. You want to give us a little more nuance, but I feel like Trump might be walking into a trap with this one. But if you want to give your thoughts, you go right ahead. And I think also they got the right to, Trump administration does have the right to cut funding. I just think that.
Well, here's my thoughts on that. Here's my thoughts. I really feel that a university such as Harvard, let's be for real. Harvard has always been for the elites. Okay.
I agree. Yep.
I mean, that's number one. And I really believe when it comes to these, again, social elites, whether it be persons or institutions, I don't think any federal funding, and by federal funding, our tax dollars should go to them. Especially when you think the average person can't even get into Harvard. They try to say, well, you have to be of intellectual excellence. No, it's who you know. That's how you get in these so-called upper elite schools such as Harvard. It's who you know. And I really don't feel that we should be spending our tax dollars on funding institutions of the rich. I mean, Harvard is just another example of USAID. Why are tax dollars going to supplement these schools? So my whole take is that if you want federal funding, then these schools should follow the federal government mandates. They can't have it both ways. And if these schools want to engage in anti-Semitism, because listen, they always dealt with race. They always been racial motivated. They have their certain quota of how many black people can come to school at one time. And I just think, listen, if they should be independent, they should run independently of our tax dollars. That's the bottom line of what I have to say concerning schools like Harvard. Because, I really think, and he'll hear me when I say this, I really think a college education is overrated.
I agree with that.
Is because a lot of courses what these students take up don't lead to any type of job. It's not going to lead to a job anyway. I mean, you look at the curriculums that they're teaching in these schools, gender studies and all kind of nonsense. It's just ridiculous. And I don't feel that federal funds should go to colleges that just want to just teach woke ideology. That's my feeling on that.
All right, interesting take. My thing is, and I'm conspiracy, brother. I know I'm holding you up. I'm all about the devil's in the details, because if we get another Democrat president, unfortunately, and we once again have more of these pro-conservative kind of freedom, maybe groups on campus and whatnot, the hammer's going to eventually come back. So what I'm saying is, like, I get it. I'm not with the DEI. I'm not with the wokeness. I just feel like we need we need, maybe Pastor Green, you can give me your definition of anti-Semitism, because just criticizing Israel, I feel like, is a lot different from saying, oh, it's the Jews, go after the Jewish student, like beat them up, take over buildings. Like, I ain't for any of that. I am for, like, to at least be able to criticize Israel and this level of stranglehold it has on the country, and a lot of things that are even anti-Christian that's coming out of just this stranglehold with Israel on the Trump administration and kind of our country. So I get it. Like, I'm glad they're getting rid of DEI. That's been useless. But I'm trying to figure out, like, if they're never clear about a definition of anti-Semitism. And because even way before October 7th, you had Farrakhan, Riza Islam. You had a lot of people that were talking about just things about, once again, the state of Israel and their influence, and LBJ and how he pretty much ushered in, after JFK got killed, LBJ was like Israel #1, and kind of came through and did a lot of things, including not letting AIPAC register with FARA. So I just wish we have a better, if they could give us a definition of anti-Semitism, of like violence and inciting violence and performing violence, versus just, we should just be able to criticize another country. And I feel like our interest should be America first, not Palestine first, not Israel first. But so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. But if you, Pastor Green, or Conspiracy Brother, wanted to add to that, I just think we need tighter definitions and not this changing definition of anti-Semitism. Because
but you know what happened? What happened since October 7th in this country is ridiculous, because you have all these pro-Palestinian protesters disrupting our way of life in our country. Okay, and I don't feel I strongly am against supporting terrorists.
Well, yeah, I'm not pro Hamas,
and that's what we see. We see. I mean, listen, there's nobody has a right to come in this country or be in this country, and if you have something to say it without a mask on, say it without no face covering on.
I agree. Yep.
And when you say it, but don't be disrupting our life here in America, because it's gotten out of hand. The bottom line is gotten out of hand. All these pro-Palestinian protests in this country. No, you want to listen. You want to defend. You want to defend the PLO. Then go over there and do that. You can't be here on a student visa. You can't be here and making the classroom into your center of protest. That's not what you're here for. You want to get an American education, fine. We afford you that. But to come here, and what I consider to be acts of terrorism, and you're supposed to be a college student, no, it's gone too far. It's gone too far.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think, once again, and I've said this before, whether they're coming across the southern border or they're flying over here from the Middle East and then they just want to get all anti-American, my thoughts is that, hey, everybody that comes here, you need to sit through a citizenship class. You need to have term periods where you come back 6 months, 12 months later to your local ICE office, and you could prove that you're learning English, that you're properly assimilating, and that you're coming here with some healthy respect for American values. Whatever you choose to maybe protest your, whatever your political ideology is, you can practice that. But I feel like there's a lot of people who, once again, we need to get back to that healthy America first mentality. And yeah, people are going to come over here and just cause chaos. I mean, they still have the right to protest that. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, the Trump administration does have the right to revoke your pass. Like, you can do this. There's going to be consequences. They could revoke your green card. Yeah, they could pull the funding from the schools. My biggest concern is just the whole never defining anti-Semitism, to where, like, yeah, you can speak against Israel or against the Trump administration and at your own risk. But I'm just still kind of like, hey, I do believe in free speech. I just think y'all grabbing, having masks and rioting, and y'all take shit too far with the left. That's kind of where I have an issue. So it's kind of multifaceted. But conspiracy, brother, I think you kind of get what we're kind of talking at. But I'd like to get your thoughts on this Trump administration versus Harvard.
Yeah, so my biggest issue with a lot of these behaviors and stuff coming out of the administration concerning these protests is this: if these same individuals are just protesting our government or the president or something American, they wouldn't care. Nobody would care. This wouldn't be an issue. But we have these protections for another country who is not ours. That's my biggest issue. I do not like, as you said, conservative brother, the way that they have kind of manipulated the definition of anti-Semitism to include the criticism of Israel as a country in that, because that says nothing of the people. I mean, you can be upset with the country of Canada, since we live right here near the border.
I'm upset with
you
China.
Can be upset. Right, you could be, but you would. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're upset with Canadians or Chinese people. You know what I'm saying? And so those are distinct, in my mind, those are distinct differences. And so if a person has a criticism against the government of Israel or the nation of Israel, that does not necessarily mean that they also have an issue with Jewish people or Israeli people. And what we have seen, honestly, is that the majority of people protesting are Jewish people. Maybe not the majority, right? Maybe not the majority, but a large portion of people who protest Israel are Jewish people. So it comes that fallacy, no true Scotsman, right? When you look at the criticisms that the Zionists or Israel supporters have against other Jewish people who have criticisms against Israel. Even in Israel, they're allowed to have protests, and their media is allowed to tell more truth and more complete stories of what's going on within their country than they are here. And so I think that's weird, that we give another country more protection in this country than we give ourselves. There is no rule. Nobody is even considering trying to make it difficult for a university or students to live in this country or operate in this country if they have anti-American sentiments. But if you have anti-Israel sentiments, Marco Rubio has been on record saying something to the effect, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember it verbatim, but something to the effect that if you have anti-Israel sentiments, that could affect your ability to come here. Maybe it was a printout. And that's a problem. That's a problem we shouldn't have to have, we shouldn't have to consider. I think you two gentlemen know my stance on immigration. By and large, you understand that I look at it as an exploitative tool used to undermine American workers and the American workforce. But and so I think our government has a hand in destabilizing a lot of these countries to force immigration onto American people. They bring them here, and because they can live lives that are so detached from the conditions that they create, they're fine with allowing immigrants to come here continually. And a lot of it is also the Democratic Party sees immigrants as a viable option to maintain political power, right? And in that same way, you look here, these individuals are no, not in that same way. So we know my stance on immigration and how I feel about it, but that should not be a condition for allowing people to immigrate to this country. How do you feel about America? As you said, conservative brother, how are you assimilating into American culture and life? How are you adapting? We talked last episode or 2 episodes ago about how many foreign judges there were and how, I don't feel that you could adequately adapt and assimilate into our culture in a way that you can interpret our laws properly from a native perspective if you are an immigrant as a lawyer, but they have whatever general qualifications that is necessary to be a judge in this country, a federal judge. And that applies in most cases to these individuals as well. But there are reasons why, as Pastor Green said, with these quotas and stuff, or who you allow to come to these elite universities, you would bring in immigrants opposed to trying to empower and enrich homegrown, educated, or homegrown talent, so to speak, giving those opportunities to homegrown individuals. It always, for me, is a head scratcher when you have international students in any large degree at an American university. Because to me, in my mind, those are slots and spots that should be available to American citizens. And a lot of times we don't think of them as tax cuts. I mean, we don't think of tax cuts as a government handout, but they are. So when you give universities the opportunity to not have to pay taxes on land or not pay taxes on renovations or whatever, that's a government handout. You can consider that like receiving some kind of government funding because that's money you aren't paying that normal people have to pay. And so that's a point for Pastor Green as well. These elite universities are able. Harvard has like a $30 billion endowment. Everybody who goes to Harvard could go for free and they'd have billions of dollars left over. Right? So they don't deserve, in my opinion, to continue to receive federal funding, but they do because they're a nonprofit. And so we really need to understand that there is a game at play and what it all means, because they would rather infuse a new group of people into this country at every cost from every corner rather than raise up their own American citizens and empower them to be smart enough to do the jobs, to be educated enough to make laws, to fight back, and to improve their country in the way that they see fit as American people. That's it for me.
All right. Okay. Well, and just right here, just want to kind of go over this last point. Harvard must adopt a new policy on student groups. Basically, I ain't gonna read this whole thing, but you guys can read it here on the screen. So once again, my biggest fear, if we get some Democrat president back in and they go to like a Hillsdale College, a Christian college out here in Michigan, or Auburn University, big Christian college that they went through like a big like Christian Revolution revival. They had like this 2-month long revival of all these students finding Christ and whatnot. And we go in here and say, okay, Hillsdale College, Auburn University now must adopt this student club where any of these organizations, including MAGA, Student MAGA, or pro-life club, could be eliminated. You guys kind of get where I'm going with this. Once again, y'all just protesting on campus peacefully, no mask. You're not badgering people, preventing them to get where they're going. You're not inciting violence. You're not you're not calling for violence. I got no beef, But once again, if you're like praising Hamas, you're not just saying, hey, I'm for Palestine. There's a difference between not being against people getting killed in Gaza and the Gaza genocide versus I'm just praising Hamas and killing as many Jews as possible. There's a big difference there. So I think Pastor Green, I get what you're saying, and I think Conspiracy Brother, you had a really good point as well. But at the same time, people have the right, like the administration, they do have the right. If they don't want federal taxpayer money, these people can continue making a stand for their causes. They just got to learn to live with the consequences if the Trump administration does decide to take the funding or, strip them of the federal funding. They just have to realize that there are going to be consequences for that. I'm just still weary about the whole anti-Semitism and just being able to criticize Israel versus all that other crazy stuff the left does. And I don't agree with. All right, so moving on, y'all. Let's go ahead and hit up our next topic. We're kind of moving right along. It's about an hour, 18 minutes. I'm gonna just make that note in here. All right, y'all. Next topic we have Pope Francis. Pope Francis of the Catholic Church, who's been the Pope, I believe, for the past 12, 13 years. He passed this week. He's definitely someone that obviously a lot of people have different thoughts on. I believe his funeral was just held a day or two ago, or I don't know if it's like a week-long funeral, but the funeral has been held this week. Pope Francis has been known as a very progressive pope, if you will. I definitely have some thoughts on him. And we're not here to dance on anybody's grave, or obviously there's still a great amount of respect I give to that position, that office, same way as we would the president of the United States, even if we do have political stances we don't agree with. But he passed, I believe, this past Monday, the day right after Easter Sunday. So once again, whoever, Pastor Green, if you'd like to kick things off, just kind of give your general thoughts on the passing of Pope Francis. Rest in peace.
Well, all really I will say is just what you said, rest in peace, because a lot of things that he advocated for, I'm totally against. You can't find no Bible to endorse same-sex marriage. You can't find no Bible to endorse illegal aliens coming in other people's countries. But these were the things that he felt were his progressive stances. And really, a lot of things that he advocated for, that he stood for, are really anti-biblical in what he was saying. So my condolences, but that's all I have to say as far as the Pope, this Pope, Pope Francis.
Mm-hmm.
He has my condolences, but
Yep.
that's all.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
And I think, and Conspiracy Brother, I'm about to pass it to you. I just had a couple thoughts. Yeah, I think once again, we're not here to dance on the grave of anybody. Once again, we respect all life. All life is precious, as I'd say, whether you're black or white or in Palestine or the Palisades, as we say. But troubling with Pope Francis is once again his stances, which I think even as like a Christian, like a outsider looking in, I'm not Catholic. My denomination's Baptist, but we just saw a very troubling trend of this leftist progressive agenda being pushed. Basically, I think Pope Francis did to the Catholic Church what Barack Obama did to the United States. Francis pulled an Obama, Obama pulled a Francis. And then on top of that, really his alignment and really his platforming, or him being installed or platformed to really be this globalist figurehead for the World Economic Forum. I mean, his ties and dealings with Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, kind of really pushing a lot of the pagan green agenda, and just really just being a cheerleader for most of the left.
Exactly.
And I think once again, I'm not going to speak on a lot of the Catholic inner workings, because once again, I believe there's like the head of the remaining priests. They're going into voting next week or something like that. And part of me is like, it doesn't feel very democratic. You got you got some conservative popes. I mean, the conservative priests, some left-leaning priests that supported Francis. And they're going to go in and just vote. And then when they finish voting, some smoke's going to come out the tower. Then they announce the new pope. So I feel like it could literally go either way. I mean, we got Trump in there, but we can end up having another left-leaning pope, or it may take a turn and we might get more conservative pope in there. I'm hoping it's conservative, but what do I know? So that's kind of my general thoughts. Like, once again, he wasn't just left-leaning a little; he kind of really pushed the agenda forward the way Obama did. And once again, he doesn't have any direct control, I believe, over my life, but just seeing what his alignment with, like I said, a lot of these elite globalists, the King of England, King Charles, and all of them kind of work together in the same cabal. So we'll just have to see if good prevails, depending on who this new pope is. But I think it is a slight, I want to say a slight win. I'm not trying to say Francis dying is a win, but I think at least right now we have a breather, and there may be a possibility we can get a little bit more of a anti-globalist. At least the Catholic Church might be able to dial it back a little bit from this progressive agenda, and which has been also been cheerleading. Catholic Church has been cheerleading the past 12 years this global agenda, which I don't rock with. So, Conspiracy Brother, your thoughts on the passing of Pope Francis, what that may look like, the Catholic Church, and us moving forward.
Yeah, my wife grew up Catholic.
Okay.
My mother-in-law is still a practicing Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So she went to Rome,
Mm-hmm.
went to Italy in February. She was supposed to see the Pope, but that was kind of like when he initially fell ill. So I talked to her a bit to try to see what her perspective was about him. But I didn't want to ask too much because, people are particular and, personal stuff. And so, but one thing that I thought was really interesting, because I talked to her, but we've had Pope John Paul was the Pope from 1978 and whenever.
And then, 2005.
Yeah, then Pope Benedict, Ratzinger, was Pope, and then Francis. And so in our lifetimes, we've had 3 popes. And that's a lot, most people don't have that many. Like Pope John Paul I was only Pope for a couple months. So I think that's, strange too. That doesn't typically happen where your Pope lasts months. But in modern times, the Pope is not around that long. The Pope is around a lot longer than a month or so. And so it's interesting that you had these popes. Pope Benedict resigned, which was really kind of a big deal in scandal. And then Pope Francis died after that. But, as you all have said, I've got my own opinions about the institution of the papacy and of the Catholic Church as a force for positivity in the world. But, a life is lost, and that life meant something to some people. And to those people, I offer condolence. And I think that's about all I have.
Okay.
It's interesting, I'll say, about the papacy in general. They're like the Pope is a non-hereditary monarchy. So, like, the Pope is actually the king of, I guess to be kind of crude about it, the king of the Catholics. He's actually a king. So,
yeah. I had a few other thoughts. Pastor Green, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we can move on.
Okay. All right. I was just gonna mention the fact that, like I said, I mean, I'm not Catholic. I don't know. I know for years there has been an agenda. Obviously, there's things about the Catholic Church, different priests abusing, different kids. I think while that has been prevalent in probably for a long time, and then it started to come out about it, I think there's also been for a long time a very anti-Christian agenda in the media that has fueled and exaggerated a lot of it. I'm not saying there weren't kids abused, and there were priests over the years that have been exposed, but I also felt like this was just kind of me thinking about it. There has been, and even things with like even Candace Owens hasn't covered a lot of this. So there's been a lot of like a kernel of truth, and then it's kind of exaggerated on kind of really the war against Christianity. I've said this is like a spiritual war. With that, now with that being said, I think true Christians who are believers and realize like, hey, this is a spiritual war. Everything isn't for everybody. And what I mean by that is that Pope Francis, his leftist views and kind of the progressive things he pushed is really just a symptom of, I feel like, a lot of different Christian denominations that over the past 30, 40 years, as church attendance declines, they go and say, you know what, we need to be in a giant umbrella. We need to go after everybody. And oh, Jesus gets us and he gets you. And come on in, and love is love. And that's kind of where the infiltration of LGBTQ has been on a lot of denominations. Once again, like, I'm not trying to bash them, but I think we all have driven past a lot of Episcopal churches or Presbyterian churches with the pride flags that they've been heavily infiltrated. I'm not saying all of them. So I just say that to say this is still an uncomfortable point I wanted to bring up because it was on my spirit. But I think this is a good way to like at least have that conversation to where for us to take a step back and say, okay, what has led to a lot of this leftist progressive infiltration? Instead of speaking on the word and being about the word, you're not concerned about how much money is going to your collection plate or how many, or if you have a popular amount of attendance or if you're praised on social media. We're supposed to be in the world, not of the world. So I think Pope Francis, his views, and I think was a big reflection on trying to be of the world, where you're trying to get everybody, hey, everybody, gay marriage is okay and all, so I just say that to say I think you guys get what I'm saying is that we just have to be mindful and take this as a lesson of when Christianity tries to get lukewarm or you're religious, you end up compromising your moral religious values because you want everybody to agree with you or not offend anybody, and you want to be of the world and be popular and not, and increase your attendance. This is kind of this is kind of the path that leads down to. So I just want to kind of land my plane there. I just felt like that was on my spirit.
Well,
But
I gotta add to that, and
yeah, go ahead.
everything you said was correct because see what we have right now is we have the sheeps and the goats, and really when you look at Pope Francis and everything he stood for, he would be what we would call the goats because Christians are not supposed to be like the rest of the world. We're not,
Right. Yep.
you know. And as Christians, we supposed to serve God with distinction. What do I mean by distinction? That we are supposed to be true to what the Word of God says. And you have a lot of what you have today is you have what we would call wolves in sheep clothing, and there are too many wolves in sheep clothing that they'll use the name of Jesus, but they don't have no relationship with Jesus at all. When you look at even Pope Francis, or I'll give you a relevant distinction. You look at someone like Jamal Bryant.
Yep.
I mean, the things that he says and things that he does are not Christian at all. But yet he wears the title pastor. And see, a lot of these titles just don't mean anything if you truly are not serving the Lord according to his word. And see, that's what makes a person a Christian, not by what you just say, but how you live. And too many behind pulpits are Christians in name only. It just takes me back to an old saying. If someone accused you of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? But what you see now, no, there wouldn't be enough evidence to convict a lot of people of being a Christian, and that's the problem. That's the travesty.
Yep, and I'm glad we kind of cut deeper on this because I get it. Like none of us are perfect, and no religion is perfect either. Just how once again the LGBTQ, the pride flag infiltrates certain denominations. A lot of people can kind of point the finger, but guess what? Are you stealing the money out of your church and using it to buy that new car? I'm not saying you, Pastor Graham. I'm just saying like general. Or is
No, I
there?
know
Is there
exactly what you're saying.
yeah,
I know
there's certain
exactly what you're saying.
pastors that once again they're sleeping with two of the choir members or whatever it may be. There's plenty of sin to go around, and nobody's perfect. I'm a sinner myself, and I'm still working every day to get better at that. But I think this once again is just a conversation on like how are you living, when nobody's looking and behind closed doors, and we need to realize that it's partly on us that this infiltration of even in the Catholic Church example of Pope Francis and the things he pushed. Well, let's look at all the other denominations and the things going on, and even the racial idolatry in the Black community, where they're putting skin color above Jesus Christ and the word and the principles, and they're taking on this social justice warrior Democrat mentality that's like pro-abortion and all this other stuff. So the finger needs to be pointed at us as well. In addition to this, and what the Francis has been pushing. So I wanted to kind of just in my high horse there, but I just that was just on my spirit. Figure it'd be on the we might as well add that to the conversation since it's already uncomfortable as it is. Anything else?
You're totally correct. And let me just say this last thing concerning, you when you say we're not perfect, well, the biblical definition of perfect is to be fully mature.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that's what a true Christian strive for, is to be fully mature, full grown in the Word of God, where you reach a certain status as that you as a Christian, God can depend on you to say what is true according to His word, and to live as an example, as a vessel of honor that He can use. So that's what the Bible means by perfect, and that's what the Bible means by Christ-like, to be a full, mature Christian.
Amen on that, Pastor Graham. We'll just land our plane there. It was a perfect wrap up. All right, y'all. Moving on to the next topic, we have the deportation of Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia, aka the left's Maryland Man. The Maryland Man. Do you know the Maryland Man? The Maryland Man? The Maryland Man. Yes, so you kind of see where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
Also, kind of what was that? What was that Elton John, Billy Joel song? Do you know the Piano Man or the Maryland Man? I wasn't blessed with a voice, but here we go. The case of Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia. Once again, this came out when there was I think almost a month ago, a few weeks ago, where there was a mass deportation order, arrest of some, I believe, MS-13 gang members in Philadelphia, Maryland, and he was rounded up in there. Apparently, he was a barber that relocated to Maryland. But when some court documents came out, there were two different courts, one immigration court, I forgot the other one. His wife filed an affidavit. His wife filed an affidavit in 2021 with documentation of multiple domestic abuse charges, multiple domestic abuse allegations. But like I said, basically he ended up getting deported to El Salvador, where he's from. He is a citizen of El Salvador. He originally came to this country illegally. And there's been things there in two different courts. He was convicted of having not convicted of having the MS-13 tattoos. He was caught in human trafficking case of trafficking people during a traffic stop. Basically, the two different courts determined he was part of MS-13 and been kind of running with him ever since. But the left kind of continues to push like this guy was just a Maryland man, a Maryland father. And I'm just getting tired of all the semantics. I look at the facts, and I didn't go in here just thinking, oh, he's a legal migrant, ship him back. But as we do our research and we start to see the foolery, and I just want to see the facts, and I went through the facts, they're kind of once again turning this illegal migrant into the victim, and they got no smoke or any sort of energy for the victims of illegal migrants. So I'm gonna just kind of restrain myself for now. But here's the Maryland man that the left's claiming is, being persecuted. But those are my thoughts. But Pastor Green, you want to kick things off, and then Conspiracy Brother.
No, I feel the same as you. Because first of all, let's understand one thing: this man is a criminal because he was here illegally. He's an illegal alien. Right. Bottom line. And the thing that aggravates me is these activist judges saying, "Well, he was denied due process." Due process is for American citizens when they deal with the legal system. An illegal alien is not entitled to due process. If you are here illegally and you are found, then there's no argument. You're supposed to be deported. And see, we see the hypocrisy again because of Barack Obama deported 300 illegals, 3 million illegals.
He was the deporter in chief, they call him.
That's what they call him, deporter in chief. But when Trump does it, now it's a problem. And see, there is no legal basis to stand in Trump's way. These people are not American citizens. Therefore, they are criminals. And when the law discovers them and rounds them up, it's deportation, no questions asked, no due process. And I'm just sick of these activist judges, and the Democrats now, they advocate more for these illegals than they do for American citizens. And what example can I use to prove that? Look how many people are homeless Americans born and raised in America. What's being done for them? Nothing. But yet illegals can come here in these so-called sanctuary cities and they get free housing, free meals, and they've been given jobs, and some have been given new homes, refurbished homes, and the right to vote, even though it's illegal. So, this has to stop. And to think that some judge would say he has to be brought back here is just ridiculous. Brought back here for what? I mean, this stuff is just foolishness.
Yeah, and
but the bottom line is, if Trump does it, then it's got to be wrong.
Yeah, and
that's the bottom line.
And you can see here. Yeah, and also we'll give a shout out to Dennis in the chat. We didn't get a chance to maybe Conspiracy Brother, you could put Dennis's chat up. Doesn't matter what any of us think. I think he was commenting on we were talking about Karmelo Anthony case earlier. Doesn't matter what any of us think individually. There is always a very stern element of racial injustice that is being applied toward the Black individual at all times. I'm not in total agreement to that. I think there is a history of that in certain cases. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. Appreciate the comment. Then Krista said, hey fam, thanks for joining us. So yeah, I think even with the wife is now backpedaling because she put those affidavits in 2021 about the abuse, but since he went viral in this story, the NGOs and activists reached out to her. They sent her some money. So now she's backpedaling and singing a different tune. Now they're platforming her in all the media. I just want my husband back. But I think we all know politically the deal with this. and it's just ridiculous to where I'm not like, you know, I got a lot to say, but conspiracy brother, you go ahead first. I'll hog the whole time.
I sent you a PDF from a court document from the Fourth Circuit Appeals Court.
You email me or what? Where is it?
I put it in the group me.
Oh,
Send it
okay.
to you. If you read the conclusion, it's on page 13. You can read the introduction if you want.
Okay. Could you give us maybe a Cliff Note version? Like, what did you take away from it? And then I could try and pull it up.
It's really short, but basically,
So he has this stay order or whatever, where they're saying, "Oh, you can't deport." You know, that's what the Democrats are all saying. You can't have deported him to El Salvador, even though he's an El Salvadorian citizen.
All right.
And in this stay order, now I don't know if this is because the document that I downloaded is dated from on the top is dated from 4/6/25. But the actual case, let me see. The actual case, I don't know when the case is from. I think because it still says it's. Anyway, the judge says he can't be sent back to Guatemala. And I don't know why he says that.
What's that got to do with it? Even you had El Salvador president that met with Trump, and he even said, "Why would I even send him back? He was a citizen of El Salvador, and he's an MS-13 gang member." So I'm just trying to understand what case they're still trying to make out of this.
There's no logic. There's no logic. None of this.
Yeah, well, so that's the thing. You know, I watch Tim Black a lot, and Tim Black talked about how, like in the DMV area, and then I posted some information about that in our other group meet. Like the DMV area has the highest amount of people from El Salvador in the country. So DC, Maryland, Virginia, even more than LA. Like LA by itself has more than DC by itself. But when you combine the amount of people in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, there's more Salvadorians there than there are in LA. And so, you know, that's the largest concentration. And Tim Black was saying, like, there's always MS-13 stuff. And I remember when I lived in DC, kind of seeing how many like Salvadorians there were and looking that up. There are more people who live, at least that's what I heard. There are more people who live, there are more Salvadorian people who live outside of El Salvador than there are who live inside of El Salvador. And so, you know, he had been adjudicated to be a member of MS-13, which is a gang that actually started in America. It's a Salvadorian gang, but they started in the United States. And as those people were deported, I believe they started in American prisons in California. And as those people were deported, they brought it back to El Salvador with them. But there's a story of him being in a car that I believe belonged to either a known drug or human smuggler. They were driving from Houston to Maryland, 3 days, 8 people, no luggage. They get pulled over in Tennessee. And I believe the officer in Tennessee said he was instructed by the FBI to let the guy go. So it's a weird situation. It's a weird hill for them to die on. As you said, this whole Maryland man idea. Oh, he's a citizen of Maryland and whatever. How can you be a resident of a city and you're not a citizen of the country? You know what I'm saying? Like when I went to Tokyo, me and my family went to Tokyo. Did I become a resident of Tokyo? Could I become a resident of Tokyo even though I'm not a citizen of Japan or didn't have the legal authority to stay there? You know, this is kind of weird. And again, this is kind of going back to when we talked about what topic was it earlier? We talked about the Democrats desire to place the importance on other groups. I think it was when we were talking about free speech at Harvard and all that stuff. The desire to place a higher importance on other people, non-citizens, than their own people, because they're going down there and fighting to free a man from his own. Because this is a situation, from some of the stuff that I've watched, they did not send him to El Salvador under the same conditions as they sent the Venezuelans. So if he's in prison at the behest of his own government. It isn't at, the U.S. government did not send him there as a condition that he would be imprisoned, or, on the condition of imprisonment. That's his own government doing that. So if they've moved him to a different type of prison, that is also their government doing that. Now, maybe, some calls have been made in the background, but that's their government. It would be no different than if American person was in Germany, or like look at Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden is in, let's say he's in Russia now, and he went to another country and he got deported back to the United States, and France or Germany said to the United States government, hey, you can't put him in jail, or you can't put him in solitary confinement. You give him to us. You know what I'm saying? What would the U.S. government do with a U.S. citizen if they were requested by a second country to do something different to their own citizen? It wouldn't happen. You know what I'm saying? That just wouldn't work. And so this is just a weird hill for the Democratic Party to die on. But when you look at the way they're obviously trying to increase the amount of immigrant support in order to try to gain or maintain political power, it makes total sense. Again, I'm not anti-immigrant. I understand immigration as a tool of exploitation on not only immigrant workers, but American workers. And so I try to keep that perspective, even, as we talk about these types of topics. For a lot of us, they get uncomfortable and murky because of the way they have often been portrayed. But, these people are exploited by these corporations and different organizations in order to weaken the American worker and diminish the quality of life of American people. And that's simply the case. Yeah. And so this gentleman who was here illegally, that is the crime in and of itself, apart from the fact that he was adjudicated to be a member of a gang twice, once in court and once on appeal, 6 years ago. If his wife wants to ever see him again, he should leave and go to El Salvador with him. That's just how it's got to be.
Yep. And once again, I think it's disgusting. This is the hill they want to die on, because once, like you mentioned, the Democrats and a lot of these elites, the corporations, they make a lot of money bringing immigrants in to where they can get bigger margins by paying them less, displacing the American workers. You have these NGOs there. Once again, they got to the wife. Now the wife is a talking head pushing for this, even though good and well she wouldn't want to even be under the same roof with this guy just a few years ago. And I think what's really bad about this is that this is just going to increase the amount of anti-immigration sentiment across the country. When there's legal immigrants, especially, who won't call this out and be like, yeah, you guys, you know what? He was here illegally, makes us look bad. We got to tamper down with all y'all coming over here. When we don't see the group calling out their own, you're going to get all the other people that are going to continue to have more pushback and more resentment. So the Democrats are pushing even further resentment and blowback for illegal and legal immigrants alike. And I really hope these other four Democrats that went down to El Salvador, along with this Senator Van Hollen guy, he already started backpedaling. He already started saying, well, me going down there, I wasn't in support of what he did. I'm just in support of his rights or whatever it was. He just started backpedaling. But I hope if the Trump administration is serious, they need to indict those 5 Democrats, including Van Hollen, on violations of the Logan Act, of going there and undermining what had already been negotiated with the Trump administration in El Salvador as, hey, this is our interfering in foreign policy. This is the Logan Act violation. And if Trump lets this slide or he gives in, that's another part. That's going to be another item added to my shit list about the Trump administration. It's like, no, you need to invoke Pam Bondi better, start drawing up the paperwork, because these 5 Democrats, they're violating the Logan Act, and we need to drop the hammer on this real quick and quit letting this foolishness continue. So anybody else got anything on this? I just wanted to kind of get that out, off my chest.
I think that's what's going to happen, and I think that's the perfect segue into our next topic.
Good point. All right, I appreciate that. All right, so once again, guys, anything else?
Well, yeah, that is a perfect segue, but I do want to say one thing, so forgive me.
Yeah, go right ahead.
But even like, the news has been saying, oh, he worked the union job and whatever. But this is a union job that should be for an American who lives in Maryland.
That part.
Probably a Black American even, right? Since the left wants so much to appeal to the idea of racism or a priority for Black people. There's a Black person from Maryland who could use a union job that has lost his union job opportunity to an illegal immigrant who is a member of a gang.
Man.
Let that sink in.
Can you even let that sink in? Yeah. Repeat that again, conspiracy brother. We need to let that sink in again. Repeat that again.
There's a Black person, since the Democratic Party loves so much to talk about racial justice in Maryland, who is not a criminal, who is trying to find decent work, who is out of the opportunity for a union job because an illegal immigrant has taken it from him, who is also in a gang.
And also trafficked other humans and beat on his wife.
And beat his wife or girlfriend or whatever you want to call it. Right. This is the kind of foolishness that we're involved in. This is what we talked about earlier with all the protests and stuff in the Karmelo Anthony situation.
You know what?
It's the same with BLM.
There's something I want to bring up.
Okay.
There's something I want to bring up. There's an ironic irony in here, because when you talk about someone beating their wife in Baltimore, there was a football player about 6 years ago, Ray Rice.
Yep.
Baltimore Ravens.
Yep.
Okay, he knocked his wife out. He did it. Okay. But that cost that man his career. And yet here we have an illegal alien, and the Democrats are trying to make him a martyr. How does that make sense?
This is the communist subversion that people have been talking about. I've mentioned Curtis Bowers, his documentary Agenda and Agenda 1, Agenda 2, where once again, the left, and this kind of is like the Joker effect, that movie, The Joker, that came out a few years ago, where basically glorified the Joker taking over Gotham in the early days before Batman was Batman. It's where the left always ends up in the position where they're defending the criminals. They end up defending the people that do the crime. And guess what? If you're Black and you push somebody in the subway or try to attack people or stab somebody, it always comes from they end up on the side of defending the criminals that committed the violence. And then the perpetrator, the person tried to stop it, or the victim's family ends up being the enemy. It's this subversion. I'm telling you, bro, it's communism, and let me not get on that high horse, but I've shared about that, but
you're totally
that's where we're at. That's why they're dying on that hill, is where the criminals are the victims, And it's not their fault. They killed anybody, they raped whoever. Hey, it's just, they had a bad childhood or they just need to be rehabilitated. No, you need the wood chipper. We need heads on a pike. Let me land my plane there if I get YouTube bans us. Like I already said the R word, so we might not get this episode up. But anything else? Anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to make that point because, like I said, they made Ray Rice
Yeah.
like he was, the most horrible man in the world, and they ended this man's career, even though him and his wife made up and they reconciled, and I believe they're still together to this day. They took that man's whole livelihood,
Yeah.
but yet they want to put an illegal who did the same thing to his wife, and they just want to make this man a national hero. It's sickening. It's sickening.
Where we're turning the victims into the bad guys, and we're turning the criminals into the heroes. George Floyd and a lot of other people, we done making into these martyrs. So let me not get started on that whole BLM that Candace already debunked, but some of y'all out there listening still believe in it. Propaganda. But let's go ahead and move on. All right, y'all. Once again, you guys are watching Uncomfy Truths. You can follow us on Rumble. We're also on YouTube as well as Odyssey. We got a couple topics left. We're into our main topic, and then we have a little time. We have a couple other ones. Letitia James, and then we have time, maybe RFK Jr. on his war on autism and how the left all of a sudden loves autism, and they're insulted by us trying to get rid of fight against autism. But anyway, our next topic, we have the FBI raided and arrested some judges. I haven't had a chance to dig into this story that deep. I believe one of the judges was New Mexico, and I think they were harboring, either the New Mexico governor or the judge was harboring an illegal migrant. And then there was another judge. But Pastor Green, why don't you give us some context? I know you wanted this to be a topic. They starting to bust down on this, so go ahead and give some commentary on this.
So again, you see how activist judges are serving the interests of illegals in this country. Now, the first situation that happened was Hannah Dugan, the judge in Wisconsin. She actually had a Mexican illegal in her courtroom, and he was in there for assault. And right in front of and ICE came to arrest him. And right in front of the victims, this judge actually told ICE to go in another direction, and she snuck this person out of her courtroom into the street. And I saw him, and they checked, and they ran him down and arrested him. But this judge actually hid an illegal alien from ICE. He kept him from illegal arrest.
That's smart.
Illegal arrest. So what happened? The FBI came back and arrested her. And she needs to go to prison. And the second case we had in New Mexico, we had this judge. His name was Caban, last name Caban. He had an illegal living in his casita. His wife had originally hired this illegal as a handyman. Now, these were two practicing judges, and they're harboring illegals, which is against the law. And the FBI raided his house and arrested him and his wife. So, you see the overall outlook is that you have judges, you have legal officials who are harboring illegal aliens. And this is madness. These people are not fit to serve in any official of capacity. They are lawbreakers. And I really feel when everything's said and done, Trump should make an example of both of these judges and put both of them in Guantanamo for the
Throw
crimes
down the
that they
hammer.
committed.
Throw down the hammer.
Exactly.
And I think, once again, I know we kind of mentioned, Conspiracy Brother, you mentioned about why is this a hill they continue to die on? It's the money. So much money is getting funneled down from these corporations that get that have incentives for illegal immigration. They funnel it down to the NGOs. Everybody's taking kickbacks. And once again, it serves the Democrat Party. They want to get their voter base that they can eventually get these non-citizens to vote. They also get, corporations get their free, or damn near free labor at the expense of the American worker. But for the most part, this is just really, and along with what I know, Doge has been kind of quiet in the media lately, but this just goes to show, like USAID and all the corruption, the money. This is where the money is at. There's money in bringing in these illegal migrants, and really, it's the whole Great Replacement theory that when Fox News or whoever mentions that, oh, that's racist. But you literally have black people in their own neighborhoods talking about, hey, this old high school that closed down, this park, our kids can no longer play at the youth park because they're housing illegal migrants. They're housing them in the old high school, in the old buildings. They're now getting the benefits. I think in New York, they were doing like $2,000-3,000 in benefits for a lot of these migrant families. This is where the money is at. And you even got to look out for Catholic charities. I saw a location over on Woodward. So Woodward's like our main street on toward downtown Detroit. They got a Catholic charities location there that popped up where Rite Aid used to be. We used to have a Rite Aid pharmacy. Now they got a Catholic charities. And I'm like, I wonder what they're doing inside there. But this is where the money is at. And it's just sad to see how many of our politicians, Democrat, a lot of establishment Republicans, the uniparty alike, who are in it for the money. They could care less about the effect on the American people, on how we're not given even a quarter of the treatment or special treatment that these illegal migrants are. We are like second-class citizens in our own country, and then you got people coming over here that are treated like kings and queens. So yeah, let's. I'm just gonna play this video. Let's see. I'm gonna play just a few minutes, or maybe a minute or two, and I'll maybe.
I'm Attorney Mark Bernstein. Our no-fee guarantee is simple. There's never a fee until we win for you.
But before I play the video, anybody have any additional thoughts? Or I'm just gonna play the video while it's. I don't think we need to listen to this. But anybody had some thoughts in addition before we move on?
Yeah. So they're trying to portray this as some kind of unprecedented move and a violation of the separation of powers, within our government. But if in the 90s, a judge would have had a criminal who was facing years in prison for drug-related offenses, and that judge would have said, hey, don't worry, you could just hide at my house, that judge would have gone to jail. You know what I'm saying? And so this is no different. If this guy committed the crime that he was accused of, and that would have resulted in his deportation, then you know what? That's what happens. And then for this judge, it's in New Mexico, it's weird. He had the guy just living at his house. There's so much freak stuff going on. You never know what. But that was just that one was weird. But yeah, again, the Democratic Party is trying to make this the new hill to die on. Here he is right here.
Well, there you go. And you know what? I'm gonna end it here. That kind of brought up a point I had, is that there are so many ways that people who are trafficked into this country are exploited. Women and children are brought here simply, when these NGOs pay the cartel to smuggle them, just the route through South America to get to the Mexican border is dangerous. People get killed. And a lot of these migrants really don't make it unless they have the cartel who's being paid to get them across. But it's at a price. If it happens to be like a father, mother, a nuclear family, guess what? The wife is pimped out, the sister's pimped out, the son is pimped out. They have to mule drugs, guns into the country, along with being sex trafficked, being labor trafficked. And there's people I know that for years had that were on this hill of like, I'm preventing children, human sex trafficking, and they got no smoke for Biden and what he has done, and how once again these judges, everybody in on this illegal migrant money train, they're making money hand and fist, whether it's, like I said, women and children being sex trafficked, labor trafficked, or they're just smuggling the fentanyl across the border. They're making money hand and fist. And that's the sad part, is that they're selling out and hurting the sexual abuse and the killing of people. They'll throw if there's like at the border and they see the border agency like people smuggling across the border or across the river, and then the smugglers see the border agents coming, they'll grab a 3-year-old toddler and throw the toddler into the river. And now the border agents is in a dilemma where, these 15 people are now getting across the border, but now this little 3-year-old kid is drowning. So do I save the drowning kid, or do I go after the 15 people that just went across? This is what's been happening in the past 3 to 4 years. And if we don't share these stories enough with that same emotion that the Democrats give, that same illogical emotion to, you gotta let these people over here, they're just sad families, we got to start having a little bit more emotion and letting them know all the consequences of this open border country. So I just wanted to kind of land my plane there. Anybody else had anything they want to add?
Yeah, and now there's a new controversy where these so-called 3 American children were deported. Now the news is reporting it as these 3 kids were just deported out the country, but they were deported with their mothers.
Right.
And deported to Argentina. But if you listen to the news, they report this as 3 kids were deported. And see, this is another thing. The Democrats like to make this, we can't separate families. And I agree with what Tom Homan said. Well, we'll send all families back.
Exactly. I was about to say, Homan.
We'll send the whole family back.
Homan put it right. All y'all can go.
But Anchor Baby, they're going to give you a right to be here. So they got sent back with their mothers. That's not what the news is reporting. They got sent back with their mothers. So,
and also, I think it's a good to remind people is that it's about probably 3/4 of the legal migrants that came over here. They are military-age males, single males who you don't know their background. They came out of a prison or asylum. It's maybe 20-30% that are actually families, like a nuclear family, a father, a mother, and the 2 kids. Even then, throughout Biden's entire administration, his first 100 days, Biden got rid of DNA testing. So the whole 3 or 4 years, you had adults coming over with minors. Yeah, there was probably a small percentage of actual parents with their kids. But guess what? Biden took away DNA testing, so we never even knew the whole 3-4 years who was the actual parent to that kid versus being trafficked. And so we could kind of place blame. And I know there's some corrupt border agents that are probably going to get indicted. I know Chrissy Noem's cracking down on that. But there were a lot of these border agents that literally had no idea. They had one hand tied behind their back. They didn't have the tools. So it's just crazy with this open border. I could go on forever on the absurdity of it because people just don't know what's been happening, and the absurdity of it, and the human suffering that people claim to be all love has no borders. No, you're creating a whole lot of suffering. You're not creating love from open borders. You're creating a whole lot of pain from your open borders irrational mentality. But yeah, I'll end my plane there. Anybody else want to add anything?
No, like I was saying.
Yeah, so on the point Pastor Green was saying, not only are they not reporting it that way where they're being deported with their mothers,
Yep.
but they're highlighting that these were American citizens, and the judges want to know what's whatever. In one case, a judge in Louisiana was requesting to speak to the mother, and he was alerted that the mother was already in the air, and I think she had already actually landed in Honduras. And the father was saying that he had a caregiver lined up to actually take care of the child here. And here's the situation. Because never one time in the article did it say the father had custody. But he didn't have custody, and he didn't appear to be a citizen, because if he was, then the child would not have been deported with the mother. But you're in a situation where you expect some caregiver, I don't care who they are, to care for your child in a country where you don't live or you're not a citizen and their mother is not a citizen. And that makes sense to you when the mother requested the child be sent back with her. The Democrats, this is what I was talking about earlier with that whole thing with the White House Correspondents' Center, with the media. They haven't changed. They will not change, because they're still trying to portray these stories. And you hear people always saying, oh, if Trump can deport a citizen or a legal resident or whatever, he can deport black people. No, he can't. He can't even deport American citizens. But no, he can't. Black people's citizenship is enshrined in the Constitution under the 14th Amendment. No, he can't.
That's a good point too, Chris Spears, but I hate to interject, but I want to bring that point up too, because remember there was that clip where Trump and El Salvador president were joking about, yeah, we could send the homegrowns as well. And the left freaks are like, oh my God, they want to send American citizens to El Salvador. Like, no, he was talking about, I think he was talking about immigrants who have children, whether legal or illegal, who are born in America. So they're legally American citizens, but or I believe they came over here as babies, but they end up joining Trinidad-Nicaragua, and they grow up and they join Trinidad-Nicaragua at a young age. So I think they still have to technically be an illegal migrant, because maybe they were brought over as a kid, but then they grew up and they joined the gang. They can qualify to go to El Salvador. But yeah, when they joked about homegrowns, they're trying to make like, oh, Trump's going to send back American citizens. So I'm going to kind of just go over that, because they're trying to take that talking point and misconstrue it. But yeah, you continue.
Yeah, and it's just like nobody's listening to you anymore. You are continuing to lose what little credibility you had, because you portray these stories in such a way that skews the truth. You know, if the mother is illegal and she is being deported and she has sole custody, and that's how our laws work, and the father's not even legal, so it doesn't even matter either. The kids have got to go. The kids have got to go. That's just the simple fact. I was telling my wife and my father, when my uncle, I talked about before, when he went to prison, my 3-year-old cousin was born. He might have been born in Mississippi, but he lived here up until that point with his father and my grandmother, and was around us, his family up north. When my uncle went to prison, my cousin went to Mississippi to stay with his mother, his parent, who he had never met or had not met frequently enough that I would say that he was comfortable, and siblings in a state, for the sake of drama, thousands of miles away from what he was comfortable with and thousands of miles from people he knew. And guess what happened? And now he sounds like Jiminy Cricket, but that's just life, right? 20-some years later, if you speak to my cousin, you would assume he's born and bred Mississippian. Right? Because that's what happens. You go live with your parents. When your parents go to prison or they're deported or whatever the circumstances are, at least when they're American, you do what needs to be done, and that was what needed to be done. And so now my cousin sounds like that when he used to sound like us. And so this little child, because one lady was actually pregnant, so this child is going to grow up as a Honduran. And that's the simple fact.
That's that. And Conspiracy Brother, great perspective. And I just want to say this once again: the people that want to continue to die on this hill, open borders. I don't even want to. You can really mess with them. This is how I mess with them. I'll go and say like, okay, how many rooms do you have in your house? Oh, maybe 2 or 3. Oh, okay. Well, have you hosted a migrant family yet? You know, you got room. Like, I get you're all pro for all them coming to Martha's Vineyard or Chicago, New York, but do you have any in your house? Okay, let's go down to the detention center. Let's go down to the border, and this whole group of people waiting over here. Let's assign you a group of migrants. And guess what? Like I mentioned before, the majority of these migrants are military age males. They're not coming over here with any women or wives. So what do you think they're going to end up doing? What do you think they're here for? So no, you don't get to pick and choose. Like, oh, I see in this whole crowd of thousands of them, I see a little that looks like a little family cluster over here. Or I see a husband and wife and their kid. No. We just assign you one. So guess what? At your house, it could be 2, 3 military age males that show up from Haiti or Venezuela, wherever it is, and you're hosting them now. Like, you voted, so guess what? When you vote for this policy, you opt into this migrant housing program where you get randomly assigned 3 or 4 migrants to show up at your address. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, guys, but I'm saying, like, when you put those things into perspective, like, no, like, are you actually hosting them? Would you have them under your roof? And I'm not trying to fearmonger all illegal migrants. Obviously, there's some innocent people in there that just want a better life, but that's not the majority. So I just kind of like to put that out there, because most of the people that advocate for this over and over again, they're not gonna host them in their own houses unless, like these judges, they're getting paid. They're on the payroll. They're getting the kickbacks. But other than that, they wouldn't be all for it, because most people wouldn't open up their homes to these strangers, whoever it is that came from wherever country, unless you're, of course, on the payroll. Follow the money. I'm going to just leave it there. Anybody else?
Well, you see how that experiment went in Martha's Vineyards 4 years
Yep,
ago.
exactly.
They gave them cereal over a weekend and got them right out of there.
Yep, get on up out of here.
So enough is enough.
Yeah, exactly. I'm tired of this. All right, y'all. Once again, guys, we're watching Uncomfy Truths. We just got to the end of our fifth and final official topic. Now we're at about 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're about 2 hours, 20 minutes. So, guys, I'll leave it up to you. We had the last 2 topics I had. If y'all want to try and, I had Letitia James and then also RFK's War on Autism. So we can maybe table that for next time, maybe in 2 weeks. Or if y'all wanted to maybe give your thoughts on Letitia James or RFK, we can kind of do that now. It's up to you. Or we could table it for next week or
Well, as
next
far as
show.
Letitia James goes,
Yeah.
I mean, it is amazing. I mean, the very thing she accused Trump of,
Yeah.
she's actually doing.
Who would have thought?
That is amazing to me. I mean, how deranged can you be to charge somebody for what you are actually doing? Putting on paperwork that your father is your husband. You can't make this stuff up.
I mean, it's just poetic justice at its best. And I know we've been sharing memes like "Happy No One Is Above the Law" Day with the judges, and then Letitia. Once again, like these installed Negroes. I'm sorry to kind of go there, but the Alvin Braggs, Letitia James, and the Fannie Willises, where once again black people get fired up, whether it's them or Jasmine Crockett, because they're loud and just ooh, sister girl, yeah, facing down Trump. And you have no idea the establishment racist Democrats that just prop these people up to get you feeling some type of way, to get a black face in a high white place, to make you think that we're going somewhere, we're doing it. Look at old girl who ain't doing nothing for you. You still gonna be just as broke working your paycheck to paycheck job. But it's like we cheer for these people in these positions, or even like Stephen A. Smith got to get 20 million from ESPN, and yeah, we made it. It's like this trickle down social justice mentality we have, where we cheer for these handpicked uh, Negroes put in these high positions that are just being puppets for the elites. And now we see it where once again, here's the brownstone or the apartment that she allegedly falsified records. The same thing that they claim Trump was doing, even though they undervalued Mar-a-Lago, and they got Trump on this. They have the Deutsche Bank on the stand saying, "Oh, you got wrong." Like, no, Trump paid us back and made us whole. There's no victims here. There's no one got cheated. So it's just poetic justice. I just love it. Conspiracy brother, any thoughts on this? It's foolishness.
Well, yeah, I hope they throw the book at her if to whatever degree her crimes are confirmed. I don't want them to make anything up, but yeah, it's completely ridiculous, but it's not a surprise that the Democratic Party would create laws. I mean, the same thing happened with Eric Adams. They extended the statute of limitations for sexual abuse in New York so they could try to get Trump with that E. Jean Carroll case, and then a lady came out and accused Eric Adams. So it's like they like you said earlier, conservative brother, when you create laws that allow you while you're in power to go after people, you always leave yourself open for someone to come after you when they're in power. And so this is just it's idiotic, but I mean, these people deserve it. If they have done this crooked thing, and the reason I feel so particular about it is because it's all been self-serving. It's been ideological. It's been for the party. It hasn't been for the betterment of American people or
that part.
Or for the improvement of the conditions of American citizens. But it's been for their own party and their own self-interest. And so I don't have any stake in any of that. Or at best, when their lives get better, my life gets worse. So throw the all of them.
And once again, I said it once, I said it again. We may even get another shirt. Yeah, we got shirts coming soon, y'all. Me and the Conspiracy Brother been talking. We got a couple. Actually, I got a couple I sent. Look out for Uncomfy Truths. We're gonna have a merch store dropping soon. We're gonna put that out there for this summer. But I think I'm gonna add the shirt line is gonna be called, I think, like racial idolatry. It's a spiritual war, But I think our shirt so far, Conspiracy Brother, if I'm not mistaken, is non-citizen, should be a non-issue. Shirt number 2, you don't hate your government enough. Shirt number 3, the left's selective outrage always exposes their hypocrisy. And then shirt number 4 definitely holds a soft spot for me. I survived California. So I think we got this is once again the racial idolatry we have here. And once again, the racial idolatry is on the right too. You got like Nick Fuentes, had all the little foolish statements he's been giving on the Austin Metcalfe. I don't want to get into discussing that. That guy's just a far right jock. Just makes everybody on the right look bad. But the racial idolatry here is once again there's these installed puppets that you never even knew who they were a year or two ago. I can name about 2-3 qualified black female Democrats, like a Barbara Lee. I know Barbara Lee just won mayor in Oakland. I think she's still kind of an old guard, Dem, ain't gonna do much for black folks. But her, or even like what's the other name? Lady out in Ohio. But what I'm saying is, like, black people don't know who these people are a year or two ago. They weren't in your neighborhoods. They weren't paying your bills. They weren't doing anything. But then the media just props them up, and you're told, oh, yeah, Jasmine Crockett, she's your new hero. Bonnie Willis, she's your new hero. Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's your new hero. And we just sit back and go, well, she's black, so okay. The whole Obama effect. So yeah, let's get off next topic. I'm tired of looking at her right now. Anybody else before we wrap this thing up? We got.
No, I think we can wrap up now.
Yeah, I think we look.
Let's wrap it up. But I'll say this since you brought her up, because I was listening to the Supreme Court hearing the case concerning the Maryland parents and the LGBT books. I can post that if you want to listen to it. It's about 3 hours long.
Yeah. Feel free to post it. I was just gonna throw up the RFK Autism speech, and we could just we're gonna wrap it up after this.
But Ketanji Brown Jackson has got to be one of the most infuriating people. Like, I don't know if she's dumb. I feel like it's rude to call her dumb. But man, like the questions that she asks, and then I can't get over the fact that she didn't know what a woman was because she wasn't a biologist. Like, she said that in real life.
Well, her daughter,
now the woman is a Supreme Court justice. She
Yeah.
didn't know. Like, how do you know anything? If you don't know what a woman is because you're not a biologist, how do you know what a cat is? How do you
I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not a veterinarian.
You're not a mechanic. How do you know what a car is?
Yeah.
You're not an engineer. How do you know what a plane is? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so infuriating. The kinds of questions that she asks, the types of conclusions that she tries to draw, the way that she talks, she's infuriating. And like I said, I don't want to call her stupid because I feel like, she's doing it for me. She's infuriating. I feel myself getting actually dumber when I hear her talk. So, yeah.
And were you talking about when she presided over? Because I think they presided over a case of a group of parents who were fighting against these pornographic books, like LGBTQ books in school. And when she was going back and forth with the parents, parents' lawyers, she was like, "Well, why don't you guys just opt out? It's a choice. You can just pull your kids out of school, not pull the books out of school." That was like,
she said you could just go to private school, or she said you could just go to private school, or you could homeschool. And it's like, are you serious, dummy?
That's opting out. Taxes. Just pull kids out. Pull your kids out. That's opting out.
Taxes. Allow me to opt out of paying taxes for a school in my community, and I'll take my kids to private school, or I'll go and homeschool them. But so long as I'm forced to pay taxes to send my kids to or pay taxes for schools in my community, how can you tell me that I could just as easily take my kids and go pay for them to go to some other, like, she's got to be brain dead. She has got to be. You can't be that detached from the average person.
It's the money. It's the hill they die on. This might be a quote.
Really, because it's like every question she's asking is to either it is to strengthen an ideological point of view or to establish an ideological point of view. It's not to actually get to a point. And the reason is because there's no logical reason to support this. Why does a 3-year-old need to read a book about drag queens? Why is that reasonable? Now, if a parent chooses to expose their children to that, that's their right as a parent. And I can disagree, but you're the parent. But as a school, why do you think that's appropriate to expose a child to that? And I'm going to stop here.
It's the hill they're dying on because that's where the money is at. It's the hill they're dying on because that's where the money is at. There's a stack of cash at the hilltop. And that even takes me back to even COVID. There was stuff coming out during COVID where there was a woman, I forgot her name. It was like maybe 2021 or so. She was at the school board. She was dropping receipts on like the payments they were getting from the CDC, not the CDC, but it was kind of one of those other pharmaceutical companies that was paying the school board members to keep masks on the kids, to keep the kids in remote learning. This follow the money stuff. That's what has been happening, bro. That's all I got. Pastor Green, anything? We got to get the RFK. We're gonna wrap up.
Well, like I said, and like you alluded to, this is a spiritual. I think it's even more than the money. Money is a part of it, but it's overall. This is a spiritual mindset.
Good and evil.
I mean, these agendas that the Democrats are profiting off of, they're satanic agendas. And the devil is in the details.
Yeah. Amen. All right. And we're going to get to this. We're going to hit on RFK real quick. And then Pastor Green, we forgot to do the opening prayer. We're going to have you close out with the closing prayer. So really quick, guys, RFK did a press conference, I think last week. And he basically talked about his new, war on autism and going through studies and probably starting a subcommittee. Once again, I don't agree with RFK on everything. There's some things I wish he'd do. He was kind of pushing the measles vaccine and he's seeing anti-Semitisms of public health crisis. So he's kind of off on some stuff. But I really like what he's doing, removing the food dye. And that's a long time coming. But now he's talking about fighting autism. And I thought this was very interesting, Conspiracy Brother. I know you shared a video where it had to be bots or something, but people are in the comments defending autism. Like, oh, I'm 35 and I had autism since I was 4. I'm a functioning human being and I don't like being discriminated. It's like the left, whatever RFK and Trump are for, the left is all of a sudden against. So he does this speech and all of a sudden you get the left in the media coming out like the demonization of autism. Meet the autistic family, the Jones, and it's all of a sudden they're defending autism with everything they got as soon as RFK does his press conference. So I want to get y'all quick takes, and then we'll close out with the prayer, and then we'll get out of here. It's just the psyop continues. Pastor Green or whoever wants to, Conspiracy Brother, whoever wants to go.
Conspiracy Brother, you take this one.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Repeat that last part.
Basically, I remember you shared this in our group chat about like the left just kind of psyoping and trying to defend autism. RFK comes out like, hey, we're going to fight autism. We're going to start a committee looking at like the trends over the past 30, 40 years and maybe the vaccine's role in it. And I get it. People are on the spectrum. Obviously got Elon Musk who's functioning in it. And yeah, there's some people that get by on it, but large in part, most people with autism is not like
Yeah.
some God-given gift that, oh my God, this is so special. I found ways to utilize it toward my superpower. No, you can't. You live at home. You can't function, most of you. So
Yeah, well,
sorry to
yeah,
be that
and
blunt,
that's
but
the
it's
thing
like they're
about
defending it. Why are they defending it, conspiracy brother?
yeah, that's the problem with they oppose the Trump administration at all costs, in all ways, on all topics, no matter what. Because like the video I posted where they were in the comment section and they were saying, I have autism and I study economics at in college, and somebody else said I'm a computer programmer. And it's like, well, man, if all of you are autistic and have all these great skills, I guess everybody should just be autistic.
No,
You
you're
know
a
what I'm
bot. You're part of a bot farm in India. That's what you are.
You know what I'm saying? If anything, you are the exception, because for every Rain Man, I can find somebody who's nonverbal, who is 6 foot and 300 pounds and is attacking people because they can't communicate any other way. Right? So we can't get into these one-offs of whatever, but it's not normal. And that's the problem. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It isn't normal. And you may have a child who's affected by this, and that is unfortunate, whether you want to believe it or not. That's unfortunate. That's not something you look forward to. No parent gets in and has a child and says, I hope they're autistic. You know what I'm saying? Nobody says that. Right? And so when you look at the increase in rates of autism, I think it warrants a closer look. And who better to do that than the Secretary of Health and Human Services? Right? And so if there's nothing wrong with it, if everything's on the up and up, and this is just some normal process, and there's no change in actual people with autism, but there's a change in the way it's diagnosed, then no big deal. But if there is an issue and there is something more to this, we should know that too. But it would be no different than if you saw an increase in people with Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or something. Oh, well, I know somebody with Down syndrome, and they're what? They're fully functioning adults. They have a YouTube channel. Like, so what? This is still not normal. We don't normally develop in this way.
Yeah.
This is not a dig at the individual. This is not to assign blame at anybody unless it is caused by corporate greed or medical malpractice. But if this is just, an occurrence that is a result of, genetic factors, we'll know that too. So it's unfortunate that society is moving in the way that it is now, but it's not surprising.
Yep, it's this slow car accident, slow motion. We're watching in real time. All right, Pastor Green, anything else you want to add on this RFK autism before we wrap up the show?
Only thing I want to add is prior to the 80s, autism was called mental retardation.
Yeah.
But because it's not politically correct to say that, we just use a more scientific term and call it autism. But all this is really mental retardation.
And there's a spectrum. I never remember hearing spectrum like 10, 15 years ago. Now just everything's spectrum. Where's the spectrum to? Oh, that sounds a little familiar, like the 20 genders spectrum. It's a spectrum now. There's an ambiguity to where you're, if they can have you believing that you can be any gender you want, man or woman, and wherever you feel like, wherever the wind blows. Yeah. Anybody autism, Down syndrome, just a spectrum. Just get used to it. It's normal. Even though the rates are skyrocketing.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Great show. I know we got to get up out of here. Pastor Green, anything else anybody want to add before, I guess, Pastor Green, we have you do the closing prayer? You know, God knows I need it. Buddy,
Conspiracy, brother?
anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Nope, I'm fine.
All right. Now we got to get up out of here. All right, Pastor Green, give us send us on our way a little quick prayer.
Yes. And dear God, I just pray, Father God, that you would be with the Trump administration as he endeavors to clean up the corruption in this country. I pray, Father God, that, Lord, you would bring up a standard of righteousness and that you would correct all the evil from all these judges who are standing in the way of justice. Lord, I pray that you would continue, Lord, to let us speak loudly and boldly on this platform and continue to say what needs to be said, whether it is uncomfortable. If it's uncomfortable, let it be uncomfortable, but most of all, let it be true in what we say. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Green. Thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Uncomfy Truths. We will be back in about 2 weeks as usual, the usual live show schedule. And our parting words, remember, stay awake, not woke. Just because we're paranoid doesn't mean we're wrong. Keep thinking for yourself. And remember, if somebody else won't say it, then we will. Peace, y'all.